Namaste, Jai Hind, and thank you for staying with us here as we try to get the perspective on our Samvidhan. We're building up to the Constitution Day, and this is the Constitution series here on the Right Stand, and of course, trying to get the perspective on this beautiful effort by our founding fathers and mothers, that is our Samvidhan, which was adopted on the 26th of November 1949, came into force from the 26th of January 1950. So 73 saal, more than 7 decades, ladies and gentlemen. What does this Samvidhan today represent? Does this represent the ethos of Bharat as it was supposed to be? I'm just going to open up some of the pages and tell you why. See this page right here at the top, page number 6, when we talk about the fundamental rights, it is Ram, Lakshman and Sita, which our calligrapher Raizada Saab has put here. Then if we go further, page number 17, there is a representation of Krishna and Arjuna, where they are when they are talking about the directive principles. So with each aspect comes, like I said, see, the directive principle is representative of the Gitopadesha. So the idea is to get perspective on how Indian is our constitution. Is our constitution really working for every citizen of Bharat? And the various perspectives. So today it's journalists who are joining us, senior people, columnists, journalists, thinkers, and those who are also trying to work towards the Bharat worldview and to try and help Bharatiya rediscover themselves. So Arun Anand, the first post, is with us. We have Dopur Sharma of Op India, Rajagopalanji, and of course Madhav Nalapatji. Madhavji, namaste. Thank you very, very much. So it would have been wonderful had you been able to join us in studio, but it's great that you're joining us. So let me start from without and then bring it into the studio. So let me ask you, how Indian or how Bharatiya is our constitution?
Anand, I'd like to say that I feel very comfortable as an Indian, as a lifelong citizen of India with our constitution. And may I remind you that before freedom, we didn't have any such constitution. We had regulations set by an external power without any consultation or frankly any necessity of looking into the needs of the people. The constitution is a document for the free people. Regulations that were there during the British Raj were meant for a slave people. The point is, we promulgated the constitution, but we retained a lot of the regulations. So that is a problem. And many of the problems that we are witnessing today that we frankly inaccurately blame on the constitution can be linked to the fact that we adopted a new constitution for a free people in a free republic, but retained many of the regulations and many of the regulatory systems of the British Raj.
So it's the rules and the regulations. There's a petition in the Honorable Supreme Court demanding 222 laws which are archaic, some dating back to 1893, which need to be changed, which need to be Indianized. So Arun Anand, do you agree, disagree with Madhavji that it's not the constitution or how it was drafted in 26 November 1949, but the rules around it, our framework of regulations? Does it stop there, or would you want to blame how the executive and the judiciary interpreted it, altered it, changed the face of it over the years?
Anand, I have a different take on this. I would say that, I neither agree nor disagree with Mr. Nalapat. I think when you have the constitution was framed, in between 1947 to 1950. So that was a different era and the challenges were different. So you have to see, a constitution in that context also. And then there have been so many amendments in that. And I would also say that I think the soul of this constitution is pretty Bharatiya. And the way it has been interpreted, now like you had Article 370.
Correct.
So it was a temporary provision, but you made it kind of basically almost permanent until it was removed by this government. Similarly, you had Article 356. So it has been basically used properly also, but most of the time it has been misused. So I would say
you believe that brute force majority also alter even soul of constitution preamble no put that alter the entire of our constitution itself? 104 amendments.
I think the constitution at the best civilized Indians, which are Hindus, and the First Amendment set the tone of trying to decide of a minority. The First Amendment, which restricted speech, came from a battle between where an organized side is Ruliakat, and the fact that he wanted to have restriction influx of Hindu refugees from East Pakistan being brutalized, murdered. Freedom of expression, rights of persecuted Hindus are not happen. The because of the Nehru-Liaquat Pact. So the moment our founding fathers, so to speak, is much more than a new political was used as a press the voice of minority, and it started when you started drawing these implemented 295A for was a result of Rajpal after Rasool was as a response to the which insulted Hindus. So the Hindus did not minority, who are, by the way, very piss off. A tool to suppress the majority, victimize temples. We don't have a right to run our RTE gives them the right. Institutions.
But is that a product of the, or is it the byproduct of regulation, as Madhavji was saying? So is it the constitution to follow? Because it does give the freedom for each region, each state to define.
Look at this.
Based on linguistic, cultural aspects. Did some people, the group of people to second largest majority.
Why did and Ambedkar not want secular institution was not similar to law the religious practice that had limits on the practice for so-called you had reservation for Anglo Constitution. What they was a constitution that gives right assembly Muslim lawmakers that not on the personal laws of Muslims, and there were no personal.
But one of the directives is it not? So then insertion of this facing. So was it all politics by the executive, judiciary that corrupted the soul of the constitution?
You touched the no point, Anand. You touched the no point. Nupur explained it very nicely, and Madhav sir also. My understanding is Congress meddled with that. Three Gandhis, Indira Gandhi, Rajiv Gandhi, Sonia Gandhi. They wanted to finish this constitution. That is why now we are in a new era altogether. What Nupur spoke of for past, what Anand said or past. What I want to emphasize is it needs a revisit. Because we are in a digitalized world, we are in G20, we are not in G7, we are in G20 era, and we are in Narendra Modi era. That is why Mohan Bhagwat is repeatedly saying Hindu Rashtra. As you explained just now, the original I have seen in Parliament Centre Hall, Anand, you would have also seen that. It contains the real picture of Ram and Krishna, Gautam Buddha, etc. Why should Congress remove that and go for one particular narration? So my understanding is the Constitution of India needs a revisit. What Mr. Atal Bihari Vajpayee tried through E.S. Venkatachalaya. Now, after 2024, the hat trick of Narendra Modi, you take it from me, after UCC, Uniform Civil Code, the government of India in 2025 will revisit the Constitution because it needs a revisit. 50 years enough. We had it. So we need to go by the younger generation's aspirations. We should not be taken, for example, in temples in Tamil Nadu, as Nupur said. Temples of Tamil Nadu are under one control. Why? Why other religions are not under control? Hindu Religious Endowment Board, who brought the regulation? It is not in the Constitution. Anantasayanam Iyengar did not speak on that. 72 of that page, you go through that. I went through that. And in that, they never said it. Anantasayanam Iyengar's one. So therefore, you have to have it.
Do you believe that this Constitution needs a review or revisit? Or the way the Constitution is being interpreted, appropriated, bulldozed, or twisted, that needs to be corrected? Where do you stand? Because if the Constitution provides us right to equality, then is there really right to equality when it comes to certain sections of the country whose religious institutions are controlled by state while others have the freedom? Is it right to equality where in 9 states the minority don't have their rights or rules directed towards them? Linguistic minorities don't have the rights and the quotas that should be given to them as is defined here. Is it right to equality when this country in its directive principles said that we need to have a common civil code, but that's never had?
Look, the fact is, Anand, the Constitution is not a marble figurine. The Constitution is a living document. In that sense, can be compared to a living individual. And a living individual needs change. I quite agree with Sri Rajgopal when he said that after Narendra Modi became Prime Minister, the country has really embarked on a new era. May I point out that if you look at the speeches of key leaders of the Congress party, including Nehru, pre-partition, pre-1947, they are very clear. No question of a Muslim party or a Hindu party, or no question of pandering to Muslim sentiment or Hindu sentiment. Everybody is equal. Very, very, if I may say so, very much in favor of that. And then what happened? Partition happened. Partition was supposed to avoid bloodshed. Instead, partition became the trigger for the worst bloodshed that we have seen in the history of India. And till today, the wounds of partition have not been addressed. I have been saying this for the last maybe 30 years, that Kashi, Mathura and Ayodhya, these are the 3 important, if I may say so, religious sites of the Hindus. They are the Makkah, the Medina, the Al-Aqsa of the Hindus. Why? Because they are the birthplace of Lord Ram, Lord Krishna, and the manifestation of Shakti in the form of Kashi. So from that point of view, of all the 43,000, 41,000, whatever, only these 3, I had said, if you don't bring them back to the pre-Aurangzeb period, you are going to continue a deep wound in the Hindu psyche. The problem with the Congress leadership, after partition, after independence, they started doing things which, if they had done before partition, they probably, they could not have avoided the partition. It was a British and Muslim League Jinnah project. But these things made no sense in a country that was partitioned on the basis of religion.
I was speaking with Jai Sai Deepak and Vishnu Shankar Jain. They quoted Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, who said that the Muslims have come out and made a representation that they are evolved, they are reformed. And that, they are educated. So that's one representation. But when it came to actual reforms, they said we are not ready for reforms because the society has not yet evolved. In our case, minority is supposed to be defined based on the region, and on language, culture, etc., and representation of a particular state. Each state has the right to define who's a minority, who's not. So then the National Commission for Minorities that came into force in 2006 is a fraud. on the Constitution. So how are we allowing fraud on the Constitution? 370, Arunji said, fraud on the Constitution. So are we just keeping the Constitution as a living document and using it or appropriating it as convenient rather than doing justice to these 344 pages?
Look, firstly, I think the concept of minority itself that we have come up with in the Constitution is quite Abrahamic. Because Sanatan Dharma does not discriminate in terms of linguistic minorities, religious minorities, etc. There's no discrimination per se. So it's a very Abrahamic concept. So we believe that there will be discrimination and persecution of minorities just as there is and was in societies which are dominated by Islam, like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, etc. So that premise itself is a little problematic, where we say that we need a special commission for minorities because Hindus might persecute their minorities just like Pakistan and Bangladesh persecute their minorities. That is dichotomous in itself because that's an Abrahamic concept. We don't have that. Secondly, we will not be able to treat the Constitution as a living document and be fair to it unless we understand that our idea of religious pluralism is very different from the Abrahamic idea of religious pluralism, because religious pluralism essentially requires every religion to concede that there is a grain of truth in every other religion. Right? All Indic religions are willing to do that. Not just Hinduism. All Indic religions are willing to say that there is a grain of truth in every path that every religion prescribes. Is Islam willing to do that? Is Islam willing to say that yes, Hinduism has a grain of salt, Sanatan Dharma has a grain of salt? No, it isn't. Because it is an Abrahamic thought, it says that my God is the only God, my way is the only way, my way of life and my law is the only law. And therefore, you can't have a constitution based on religious pluralism when you're dealing with religions that are not plural.
So should we write it as, or should we say that the cultural ethos or the dharma of Bharat is Hindu in its ethos, and the dharma defines that it will be equal for all. The Constitution will look at each person as an equal, and that's why we will have to then rethink how we are going to define whether should we have a majority or a minority, or should the Constitution just look at haves and have-nots. Then we'll have to then go back and see whether we should have reservations. We should also go and see how we've treated linguistic minorities and have we really done justice, our polity, our judiciary, when it interprets the Constitution. Because what happens is between Article 14 to Article 26, the dance is phenomenal in terms of twisting the narrative in courts when the arguments are made. And often judges are also confused. There are courts which believe that personal law is above a common code. And then there are courts like the Karnataka High Court and the Kerala Court which says that an act like POCSO supersedes a personal law. So then you can't have our courts confused. Arunji.
See, I think it's in the true spirit of, what you said, Anand. There are multiple interpretations and there are, multiple truths. The Sanatan Dharma philosophy is basically about, whenever all the efforts are the difference between the Western framework and the Eastern framework or the Indian framework or Bharatiya framework, I would say, is that all of us try to reach nearer the truth, whereas the Western framework basically it talks in terms of binaries and it talks in terms of, the weaker and the stronger. And also, I want to clear one more thing, though I'm not a spokesperson of RSS. Mr. Mohan Bhagwat, the Sarsanghchalak, has never said, that, or he has never indicated that we want to have a new constitution of Hindu Rashtra. He has always said that this constitution is supreme and the soul of this constitution is Bharatiya. So we also have to, and then we don't have to form Hindu Rashtra. The Hindu Rashtra exists. So you only have to basically realize it, and he has also said, 4 years back in a conference in Vigyan Bhavan that if some people have problem with the word Hindu, no problem. You can say Bharatiya, you can say Sanatani. Whatever word you want to take, the spirit has to be there. See, practically it is difficult to treat everybody with the same, in the same category. Because like you have scheduled castes, they have suffered, and scheduled tribes, they have suffered immense injustice in the past. So they have to be treated differently, they have to be given, reservation. So you cannot say, that all of them will be, treated in the same manner. At one level, it's a heterogeneous society. And so I would say that, there is a fundamental challenge with this constitution because a significant part of it has come out of the Government of India Act, 1935.
Yeah.
So that part basically is actually creating, more of a
hassle.
So there has been some balancing by bringing in, a lot of Bharatiya things in that. For example, you have, cow protection. We have talked about that in the directive principles. So I would say, it's a continuously evolving process. I think it's a great document. It's a great work of, which our founding fathers of the Constitution have done. The only thing, it's upon us that how we take it forward. One last thing which you said, it will always be confusing. There is a saying, if you're not confused, you're not knowledgeable.
Correct.
So it will always be confusing. Different courts have interpreted it in a different manner. So, but overall, as a society, I think this constitution has ensured that democracy has prevailed in this country.
See, interestingly, the original constitution which I have, ladies and gentlemen, it is 221 pages, and after that, it's the 8th schedule followed by 8 pages of signatures of all the members who were present. Now, the 8th schedule, Articles 344(1) and 351, talks about the languages, and there are 14 languages. Please, I'm just going to show it here. And in these 14 languages, there is no English. There is no English. But there is Kashmiri, there is Sanskrit. What have we done? If the constitution protects these languages as for the 8th schedule, Sanskritam linguistic minorities, Kashmiri linguistic minorities, where are they? The last language is Urdu, the first language is Assamese, they put it in alphabetical order. But there is Kashmiri and there is Sanskrit, part of the 8th schedule. Have they been actually protected? Have we really worked towards protecting what is enshrined in our constitution?
That has not been protected, Anand, because Sanskrit was some sort of an allergy to Congress. The reason being, as Nupur and Anand was explaining, I don't want to get into that. I need a rejig of this because we are into a LGBT era, which Constitution did not speak of. You talked about India, you talked about secularism. Secularism was brought in by Madam Indira Gandhi to kill culture. I strongly argue that because today, as you see, Kashi Tamil Sangamam, why Narendra Modi taking 2,000 people from Tamil Nadu to Kashi celebrate the culture? Why Pukan, the Assam government of Assam is celebrating tomorrow Pukan's 400th birthday? Why?
Lachit Bar Pukan.
Pukan, that is a very simply word, Pukan.
Yeah.
The Pukan is very common, a home culture. Similarly, day after tomorrow, this Guru Granth Sahib ka function hone wale hain. So where do we speak about? Judicial activism is there. Health emergency during Corona, Mr. Narendra Modi did very well. It is not talked about. Financial emergency is in the constitution, not health emergency. So there are evolving situations. Keeping this 50 years of our experience, my understanding is once in 2024, if BJP returns to power, definitely Mohan Bhagwat spoke of Hindu Rashtra. I differ from Mr. Anand because Mohan Bhagwat's focus was totally different. My interpretation, his interpretation may be accepted, but my interpretation is saying that culture is focused, dharmo rakshiti rakshita, which never talked about.
So there are
therefore, coming back to that
is coming from
Sanskrit is an important culture. That is why in any speech of Prime Minister, you take it, or BJP ministers, Congress avoided Sanskrit because now in DMK they say Sanskrit ko 600 crore de diya, Hindi ko 600 crore de diya, Tamil ko nahi diya. That type of Kashmiri ko kya diya hai Congress ne? What did they do? Karan Singh wrote about in leading newspaper about that.
So are the Sanskrit speaking people of Melakot in Karnataka, are they not a linguistic minority? Should their rights not enshrined in the constitution? Are they getting it? The Kashmiri, Sharda Lipi, Sharda speaking people, their linguistic minorities in Jammu and Kashmir, are they getting their rights? Are we actually looking at minority the way it should be looked at? Should it be looked at it from a national perspective, or should it be looked at from a regional perspective, and then should our laws? Our founding fathers were visionary enough to understand that. Well, I have run out of time, but it's been a great, engaging conversation, and I think we need to have more such conversations. Sanskriti se Samvidhan hona chahiye, Samvidhan se Sanskriti nahi. That is also somebody who told us. It's, I think, somewhere broadly on the lines, who are we as a people our culture, our civilizational ethos defines that, and shouldn't that reflect in the constitution, and shouldn't that constitution then work towards protecting our Sanskriti and of course with it the people of Bharat, the Bharatiya. Madhav Nalapatji, Arunanandji, Nupurji and Rajgopalanji, thank you very much for a fantastic conversation.